What comes out of Beijing this week will determine how fast the Western humanoid robot industry can actually scale. More China news. This week's all about China. Apparently, China controls more than 90% of global rare earth magnet production. You've heard this word before, magnets, right? Apparently, those magnets go into every joint of every humanoid robot built in the West, and this affects Elon Musk and more principally his Tesla Optimus robots. The production's already been delayed because of these Chinese rare earth export restrictions, and this goes to show why this summit is so important, and Elon Musk's participation is very principled there. What comes out of Beijing this week will determine how fast the Western humanoid robot industry can actually scale, being driven by Elon Musk. And we know that he's been establishing manufacturing operations across the US, converting Tesla automotive factories specifically to output Optimus humanoid robots. For what reason, I'm not really sure, because we haven't really established if there's like a huge demand for humanoid robots across like different industries, or maybe even like, in people's homes. But China moved to restrict the exports of these rare earth magnets very recently as well, a key component for these EV motors and advanced robotics, potentially in response to the tariffs that the Trump administration had imposed over the past year. Elon Musk had continued to warn that their magnet blockade will directly slow down this production of Tesla's humanoid robots. And as we know, Elon Musk is doing everything he can to drive the speculative value of all of his different ventures that he's kind of collecting into one agglomerate or umbrella.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, this might pose very very big problems for Elon Musk, especially as SpaceX, XAI, Tesla, whatever this sort of like incestuous family looks like, when he pursues an IPO for SpaceX, potentially even this year, targeting in excess of $1 trillion market cap. That trillion again.
Yeah, I think it's like 1.75 trillion estimates right now, which is
Whew,
wild. Like that's
two
absolutely
trillion.
ludicrous. But yeah, you and I talked quite a bit about China versus the US and China versus the West in the robotics race. And we kind of discuss it, or other people discuss it, as primarily a software and AI thing. But actually, that gap is much wider, China versus the West in robotics, because we're not taking into consideration these rare earth minerals and these magnets. So just lending further to the theory, or the truth that China is far and ahead, beating everybody else in the world with robotics. They control, in essence, the whole supply chain, right? Like they got
Yeah.
everything going for them. They're perfectly poised to dominate in this sector. I think Unitree, that we've covered a few times, they're shipping 15,000 units this year, and Tesla has not yet produced a robot that does useful work. So uh, that's a big gap right there. And even the company we're going to cover in our next story, the timing is very funny here. Like there's a lot happening in robotics, and yeah, this is like kind of the crux of it. This is the main issue that is leading to a lot of tension, and another reason to have this super important summit that we're talking about right now. That's why everything really truly around that summit this week, everything
Yeah.
depends on it.
Absolutely. I mean, we mentioned it before. I think the estimates for the number of platforms, like global robotics platforms that were deployed last year, 70+% coming out of China. People think of China as this manufacturing powerhouse that's pumping out volume versus quality, but we've seen a lot of very impressive footage. We've seen some incredible humanoid robot technology coming out of China. Like, make no mistake, they are the leader globally when it comes to humanoid robotics. And so this is a very, very important time for Elon Musk's participation in this summit to try and at least relieve some pressure of what the future of his company might look like.
Yeah, and also the implications of some of these guys being in China. We're going to cover this later too. Like, what is Musk doing in China when he's supposed to be in court right now? But we'll get to that. But yeah, speaking of what we mentioned before, more robotics news. Hyundai's Boston Dynamics. I personally didn't even know that they owned Boston Dynamics. By the way,
I
this
had
kind of
no
surprised me.
idea.
Yeah, apparently they own 80% of it and 20% is owned by SoftBank, I believe. But they're facing IPO pressure right now. A lot of companies are going sailing, cruising towards IPO right now. Like IPOs are heating up, and Boston Dynamics is really looking spectacular at the moment. I think their valuation soaring to 30 trillion, another trillion, 30 trillion won. I'm not sure what the US denomination of that is, but it's a
Hmm.
lot. I can assure you of that. And under Hyundai Motor Group, Boston Dynamics valuation has reportedly jumped to around 30 trillion won, roughly 23 times higher than when Hyundai bought in. So fantastic investment for Hyundai. And
Jesus.
they're expected to bring in external capital via an IPO with listing speculation for as early or as late as this year or early next year. So the company now sits at the center of the humanoid and quadruped robotic labor story, warehouse automation, security, logistics, and eventually consumer use. An IPO would force public markets to actually price humanoid and advanced robotic revenue rather than just treating it as a viral YouTube content like we've been doing. We've been showing a lot of these speculative videos of like Chinese marathon running robots or these like big showy performances like circus displays. But yeah, like that's a good point. We're actually going to have to assign a value to this and see what the revenue looks like and what the demand looks like. More importantly, so it also sets up a huge rivalry narrative like Tesla's Optimus, Unitree, Boston Dynamics, Atlas next gen platforms. So who knows what the robotics arm race is going to look like, but I'm curious to see what this IPO turns out to look like too. I think it's likely to happen by the end of the year.
That is a massive potential valuation for Boston Dynamics. Funny enough, and much to Elon Musk's dismay, I'm sure, Boston Dynamics is now very much a household name. Many people recognize a lot of the platforms that they've been developing and researching over the past decade. Like they seem to be the leader in the US when it comes to advanced robotics research, and they've done some incredible work. A company that was founded within MIT, and so it's going to be, this is a very interesting one to keep an eye out for from an investor perspective. As far as that valuation, I think I just looked it up. I'm not very familiar with yuan, to be honest, because I never transact in yuan. But apparently, 30 trillion yuan can be around 4 to 5 trillion USD, which is an insane amount for an IPO. And I don't even know what Boston Dynamics revenue is, if they've actually shipped like consumer or industrial applications yet. But definitely want to keep an eye out for.